Anytime?
I just sent her a thing. You're live, Ms. Rita.
Okay, this is a regular meeting and public hearing being held by the Town Commission of the Town of Gulfstream on Friday, May the 8th, 2020, at 9 a.m. in the William F. Koch Jr. Commission Chambers at the Town Hall, 100 C Road, Gulfstream, Florida. Note there will be limited public access to the Town Hall. This Town Commission meeting can be accessed online, allowing for public comment. The Town Commission meeting can be viewed live online via the Town of Gulfstream Go to Stage channel from your computer, tablet, or smartphone. The public can register as an attendee to participate in the live meeting by going directly to www.joinwebinar.com and enter the meeting code 483-061-531. Public comments can also be emailed to rbasel@gulf-stream.org, fax to 561-737-0188, or called in to 561-276-5116, but no later than 8 a.m. the day of the meeting.
Are we good? Let's call the meeting to order. Please rise and pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Speller, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Lyons.
Here.
Commissioner Lyons. Vice Mayor Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Orthwine.
Here.
Mayor Morgan.
Here.
And I'll go back to Commissioner Lyons.
Here.
Yeah.
Also present are Town Manager Gregory Dunham, Assistant Town Attorney Edward Nazaro, Police Chief Edward Allen, and myself, Rita Taylor.
Thank you very much. We have the minutes before us from our last meeting on April 9th of 2020. Are there any corrections or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwine,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. I don't believe there are any changes to the agenda. Ms. Taylor, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, let's announce then our next meeting will be June 12th at 9 a.m., second Friday of every month, of course, for anyone who wishes to attend. Communication from the public. We've been presented with a letter from the Davises. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak before we address that? Ms. Basil, is there anyone else who has emailed or called in?
No.
No. All right, we have a letter then regarding a potential purchase of 2,500 square feet on the south end of the Davis's property on on Banyan. Mr. Dunham, could you just give us an outline of what they want?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you and good morning to everybody. We put this under public comments because normally, as you know, those are usually live, and we handle those in we have a standard operating procedure to handle those. Typically, we take their comments and we tell them that we'll take it under consideration and talk about it at the next meeting. So that's why we put this under. It was just provided to us through a letter. And so I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with this house. I'm sure you are familiar with it, but it's the one at the end of Banyan Street, west of Polo, that's surrounded on three sides by water. And the issue here is the street actually penetrates into the middle of their lot. And so they're seeking the opportunity to square up their lot. I believe the house that's on there right now is around 5,000 square feet. Trey and I were doing some, as he said, on the back of a napkin, numbers on it yesterday. But we wanted to introduce this to you because it was a letter, submitted to us, and the staff will be analyzing it to determine what kind of, you've read the letter, and they obviously say that their goal probably in the future is to put a new house on this. This, obviously, if we were to do this, this would give them more the lot would have a higher square footage, and therefore they would be able to achieve a higher FAR for a house. So again, we wanted to introduce the letter to you as a comment from the public, and the staff will be looking at all of the details surrounding that lot, the current house, and what potentially could be built on there. As I know you know this, but the size of houses that are meet up with water, that changes the setback requirements for the house, and it makes them larger. So it reduces the size of a house on that, or at least it increases the required setback on the side by the water. This one, again, is surrounded by three sides by water. And so that's, that's obviously what they'd like to do. We also want to look at, the town basically never uses that portion. It's literally in their front yard, and they have walls that come up to the driveway. I know you guys are all familiar with it. So we want to look at it for any kind of impacts it may have for emergency vehicles trying to, address that, for emergency purposes. And so our goal is to come back and kind of give you a summary of that at the next meeting.
Yeah, very good. Public comment's not the time to do it. You've alerted us to the position of the Davises and their request, so I think that's the right thing to do.
And Mr. Stanley had a question.
Staff will evaluate, bring back information on it. Yes, Tom.
Just real quick, I know you want to move on as public comment. I did get the letter and I took a look at the plat, and I also spoke. We don't need ex parte communication yet, but if it ever comes up again, we'll disclose it again. But I talked to Blaine Dickinson, the attorney of record for the proposed applicant, and kind of went over it with them, kind of in greater detail than what Greg just summarized. So I think, I can talk to Trey later. Obviously, it's going to come back before us most likely. So I kind of told him what the town is going to be expecting if it is ultimately approved in some way, shape, or form.
Good. Why don't you stay in touch with Trey and Greg, and so that at the next meeting we have a thorough presentation. Okay. Nobody else for public comment, I take it? So let's move on to the town manager's reports, undergrounding.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'll start out by talking about Comcast. As you know, they reached a point that they didn't have the necessary equipment to lay the drops that they needed to finish houses. They have about 8 to 10, and they've now received that fiber. It came from Virginia. And so next week, they're going to be gearing up again to lay those drops. Those are all over 500 feet. That's why they needed the new equipment. And so once they do that, they'll be able to then make appointments with with residents to make the switch over with their new equipment. So that's good news. Now with AT&T, last week I received a call, and by the way, that's the only communication I've received regarding what my report will say is by telephone. So I've not received anything in writing, but I had a gentleman call who introduced himself as being a person who is new to the project and who has replaced, you probably won't remember Annika, but Annika was like an office manager for AT&T on this project. And then there was another gentleman by the name of George Thomas who infrequently met with the group when we were meeting with Wilco, FP&L, Comcast, and AT&T all at the same time, and Danny Brannon. And so he said that he was replacing those individuals for this project, and and then he proceeded to talk about the finances for it, and suggested that AT&T, I mean, we know how much we still owe them. They're the only ones that we owe any money to at this point in time for the undergrounding. But his comment was that the town would have to sign a note because those costs have gone up. And so this was quite a shock to us. And so we are, Trey, I'm going to turn it to Mr. Nazaro here in a second. He can talk to you about our existing contract, but we are quickly seeking resources to see why this is going on. Again, they've not sent us anything in writing. It's only been by telephone, and that seems to me very unusual. But I have requested of them, information suggesting why there's a need to do this and justifying this. I don't even know, an amount at this point in time. It almost leads me to believe whether or wonder if this is real or not. But anyway, we'll be contacting Danny Brannon and then an attorney that worked with the town on the original contract with AT&T, and he's out of Tallahassee. Trey and I have contacted him, and we have a meeting with him set up. It's either Monday or Tuesday of this following week. But other than that, I can't tell you much more about it because I haven't received anything in writing from these people, if you can believe that. Trey, can you just discuss quickly, what our existing contract
Can you put Trey on?
them to do?
Sure, thank you, sir. So again, we're waiting on an exact amount from AT&T with a cost analysis comparison to the original quote, as well as information on how much work has been completed at this time. So that's information that the manager has requested, and we're just waiting for AT&T. The contract, which is from 2017, is an actual cost contract which allows for, if there are conditions in the field that are different from the field conditions that existed at the time they provided the quote, they shall bill and we shall pay an additional cost. But of course, it has the caveat in there that those conditions are or circumstances are that AT&T could not have reasonably anticipated at the time of entering into the contract. So we don't understand why at this point, like Greg said, we're really just doing some research into why the price increase has occurred and what circumstances led to that increase and why they were not reasonably anticipated. And in the event that most of the work has been done, why the work had been done with these inflated costs that were, I guess, significantly more than the contract price estimated.
Do we know what we're talking about here in terms of dollars?
Yeah, it was suggested to me that it's over $1 million.
And our contract price was for
420,000.
yeah, 420,000. So obviously we're
Increase.
shocked to see this information
Everybody's mouth.
and confused as to why, if a lot of the work has been done, why it's happening now.
Yeah, so
I would contact Gary Resnick, who negotiated the contract with the mayor with AT&T back in 2017, and we're really, reaching out to Danny Brannon, seeing why this is happening.
if you could,
It appears that there's other towns that this has happened to. We're investigating that. It's coming at the end of the, almost the tail end of the project. There's been no piece of it before. And in addition to that, whatever changes have been met in the field were adapted to by FP&L and Comcast without any change in fees. They were able to work around whatever difficulties they found in the field. So we really question why AT&T is doing it at this point in time. We're engaging Mr. Resnick, who was the attorney we brought in initially, and we're going to take a very, very firm position on enforcing our existing contract.
and if I could follow up on that, yes, the mayor's right. I did speak to Mr. Brannon, who was involved in the undergrounding effort at Palm Beach Shores.
Greg's talking again.
And he said to me that AT&T did the exact same thing to them. I think their amount was something like $800,000. Now I'm not sure. I'm not sure, how their contract read in Palm Beach Shores. But they said, or Danny told me it was in the range of $700,000 or $800,000 more than what they were expecting. And he said to me that their commission voted to not continue. So I have a feeling that they weren't as far as along as we are. But that's the other information that I've requested from them, to a specific percentage of how much they've completed to this date. And I think ours is very high, because they really only had about 8 to 10 what they call cutovers from the old system to the new left to do, and they indeed have already started taking down some of their wiring. I don't know anything about this person that called me. He said he's new and that he's still trying to determine from his team, the information that I've requested from him. So it's just strange. There's Longboat Key, I believe, has also been involved in an undergrounding project. So we're going to be reaching out to cities that our attorney up in Tallahassee has probably worked with also.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, John.
Have they
Commissioner
quit
Orthorn.
working all together? Are they AT&T?
Yes.
I mean, what's the estimated? There's no estimate when they're coming back or anything.
No, not now. I mean, Comcast is bringing in, their employees, they're bringing them back for their projects now. But AT&T, yesterday I saw an AT&T truck drive in on C Road, and it's the first time I've seen one in a month and a half. It was probably for a call, a specific call at somebody's house.
So the power lines can't be taken down till all this work is complete.
Correct. I mean, once we find out what exactly is left, I mean, we may have to just determine a way to complete it. That'll be part of, what we look into to see how we might be able to complete that if we need to.
Yeah, we have a number of options available to us, but it's premature at this time to elect one or the other. But AT&T apparently is taking this seriously. They have left the job. They have not returned since that time. And our understanding from the last commission meeting is that all of the undergrounding was moving straight away and would frankly be concluded in short order. So this is coming at the very tail end, almost blackmail-like attempt. So
right.
Let's get our information. Let's talk to council. Let's talk to Mr. Brannon, get our engineering analyses, and then we'll revisit this hopefully before next month's meeting. But
right. That would be our goal. And I ended up getting most of my information from the people in the field. And when they were rolling along, they said, look, we've been told that to finish this and don't leave anywhere before this job is done. So, and then everything went south from there with the virus. But that's where we're at this point.
Any other questions before we move on? Yes, Paul.
I really don't have any question. I'm looking forward to receiving the information and the facts. Obviously, as we all are troubled by this, being firm and deliberate, I think it's the right strategy. But let's get the facts and get the lawyers involved, and then we'll see. But I'd like to, at the end of the day, our citizens expect us to get this thing done. But not at the kind of expense that's being thrown at us either. So we sort of are being put in the middle of this, and I understand the leverage that they're applying right now, which is inappropriate. But in any case, I look forward to hearing the facts.
Yeah, just as an aside, you may recall that when we began phase 2, the bids came in from FP&L and Comcast, and there was increases, but they were reasonable given the time lapse. AT&T's was substantial. As I recall, it was almost doubling what they had charged before, and that's when we engaged Attorney Resnick to begin negotiating with them to try to bring that number down. So at the time, we even discussed not installing AT&T lines, not having AT&T in the town of Gulfstream. But we evaluated it and decided there were enough residents that still used AT&T landlines that we needed to proceed with it. But that's just a general background of what happened there. It's a tense relationship with them since the start of phase 2, frankly. The fact that they're no longer regulated as a utility also puts pressure on this rather arm's length relationship. So let's get our facts, and we will give that information to you as we receive it. Okay, Mr. Dunham, let's move on to the Plaza Soleil proposed subdivision.
Yeah, if you remember at the last month's meeting, we reported on this, and we were, from the information that we were getting, it appeared as if there was a pending sale on that property that would happen fairly soon. We saw a new site plan proposal, and we were all set to meet with Mr. Hoopy and Mr. Glickstein, we the staff, and then everything like everything else went south from there. So we never had that meeting. our understanding is that that hasn't changed at this point in time. But Mr. Nazaro and I have scheduled a meeting with Mr. Coopy and Mr. Glickstein for next week to determine what the status of that situation is at 2900 and the rest of the proposal.
Any
So
questions?
that's all I have on that.
If there's no other questions, let's move on to the Baxter Woodman drainage and street recommendations.
Okay, you all know that back in February, we engaged Baxter Woodman to really to perform an inventory of the problem locations with drainage, ponding, and rutting in the entire core area. And so we have Miss Rebecca Travis will be hooking up with us here in a second. She's going to provide to us a PowerPoint presentation regarding their analysis. I would say that there's really, and she correct me if I'm wrong here, there's really two basic parts to it, and that is expanding the roadways, and she can identify the areas that we've identified that could possibly be expanded, and then also the ponding and drainage difficulties with the infrastructure that we have out there right now, which would be our swales and our catch basins. And so those are the major components of her study. So here soon she will be coming up to make her presentation.
Does
Getting
she-
the same problem as too many people on the, so
Okay.
I don't know if you can,
You could,
you're good?
yes, go ahead.
Okay, so is the slideshow up?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, good morning. I'm Rebecca Travis with Baxter and Woodman. It's good to see you all this morning. As Greg mentioned, we've been working on the minor drainage and roadway improvements report. This is presented today as the draft report, and we can have some, let you have some review time on it and also get any kind of public involvement comments on there that you want to get and come back to us, and then we'll address those comments. The study area included Polo Drive, Gulf Stream Road, Old School Road, Banyan Road, and Lakeview Drive. First, we did a field inventory. We needed to wait till it rained, and I believe it was like end of February 26th or something. That was when you guys had that huge torrential downpour. So that was actually too much rain. So we waited to the next day because we're trying to look at what a nuisance flooding and persistent flooding occurs so we can address that. That's really the focus of this study. So then we identified a number of different drainage issues that we wanted to try and address, primarily to let the runoff from the road get to the drainage inlets or into an adjacent swale so it's off of the road pavement itself. So we identified, as I said, some drainage inlet apron locations where the water is caught on the road and can't get to the inlet. We looked at locations where we can put swales in the grass area adjacent to the road and then direct that runoff into the inlets as well. And then we looked at an intersection specifically at Old School and Polo where the stormwater pump station is at. If you look at the left picture, you could see where the runoff, the road drainage just can't get past that high spot at that south side of the intersection. So it can't get into the inlets. And then once it does drain down a little bit, the inlet right there is too high. There's a couple more inlets to the west along Old School, and the water just can't get to it because the whole intersection is uneven and not sloped to the inlets. And then finally, we looked at rutting at the edge of the pavement and consequently some roadway widening issues. As you can see, the runoff gets to the edge of the pavement, but then it sits there, and then people maybe drive off the edge of pavement as they're passing cars or passing a parked car, or they just parking there and it's rutting the grass area along the edge of the pavement. So in order to look at road widening, we needed to understand what a standard or typical road width that we wanted to assign for the town. We looked at a number of different standards, federal, state, local standards. And we wanted to have a minimum lane width recommendation that met with the character of the town of Gulfstream. So we don't want, a minimum road width or a lane width of like 10 or 12 feet that would be typical for like a larger major highway. So we wanted to go towards the minimum width, and that width for pretty much every local and residential road section is 9 feet. So then we looked at the study roads in question and looked at their existing lane width relative to the 9-foot minimum road width. So the proposed widening, and this just shows on the cross section to the right side, let's say we're going to widen that road 1 foot to the one side. It might be, in some cases, we're widening on both sides, but this is just kind of a typical section to show what we're going to do. So the recommendations for the road widening under this proposal is for Polo Drive to be widened 1 foot on each side between Palmway and Old School Road. Now this one, we actually, the balance of Polo is actually a 20-foot, so 2 10-foot lanes. So we're looking at making Polo Drive consistent throughout the town. So this one's being widened 1 foot on each side to get 2 10-foot lanes. Gulfstream Road from Lakeview to Gulfview, that one, the pavement's a little bit shifted to the west. So in order to get 2 9-foot lanes, we're proposing to widen 3 feet on the east side only. Old School Road, west of Polo Drive to Roadway, we're proposing to widen 1 foot each side. Banyan, Polo Drive to Gulfstream, widen 1 foot each side. Lakeview Drive west of Gulfstream, widen 2 foot each side. And then Lakeview Drive east of Gulfstream, widen 1 foot each side. So it's just the summary. So then we handed out these maps. You should have these. This first one, actually, there was a revision that was given to you, I hope, yesterday. So this just shows where we're proposing to put an asphalt apron around the drainage inlets, again, to get the water off the road right of way and run it into the inlet itself. We're also proposing to repair or raise or lower a couple structures. Some of them, the collar around them is broken, so we wanted to repair that. We've got some grass swales proposed in a number of locations. And then the green, orange, and red is the road widening, just based on what the proposed width is. And then going back up on the Polo and Old School Road intersection, that's a mill and overlay to try and redo that whole intersection. And then also there's an area on the west end of Old School Road where we want to do some road repair and raise that. So like I said, these 3 maps are in your report copy. So it's a little bit easier to look at it. in person than on the slides show. I realize this is kind of small, but if you have any questions, we can talk about that. So then we looked at the cost estimate. So this is a preliminary cost estimate for what we've proposed. If we receive comments back, this would on either adding or subtracting some of the proposed items of work. This number obviously would go up or down. So I kind of broke out in the percentage of the total. This total has a 20% contingency on it. So if we just looked at doing just the drainage improvements portion, that's about 16% of this total amount, was around $40,000. And then if we just do the road widening portion, that's about 84% of the total. These costs are assuming that the town either can contract this work to a contractor that's maybe already in the area or do a piggyback contract on another contract, because the asphalt quantities and rock quantities in particular are relatively small for a contractor to mobilize the equipment and come out and do this kind of work. So if we can add on to an existing contract, or maybe when the pipeline contractor's coming through, maybe we can add some of this work to that contract, because a lot of it is like minor and smaller repair work. So that was kind of a broad overview of our report, and if you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Joan.
Fourth line.
You know what, I read this and I think that the drainage things are great, the drains and all that, but I'm a little concerned about adding bits and pieces on the sides of the road, that it's going to look so ununiform even more. And maybe I've been walking the streets a lot and they're almost dangerous in some ways. They're a little uneven now, and this might add to the problem.
Yeah, that kind of brings us to the timing of the on the CIP. We had the water main replacements in the core.
Right.
So with that work, we would anticipate having to do some more global work on the road section. So let's say we run a new water main down Polo Drive. That would obviously disrupt the existing pavement section, and we would then address a more provision of a more consistent slope. Right now you've kind of got a undulating road section in a number of places, not just on Polo, but on other locations. So this study for the drainage improvements and the possibility of doing widening work at this time frame would just be kind of a initial shot at taking care of some of the more obvious drainage issues and doing the widening to just address the rutting. But you're correct in that this is not a real fix for the road. I don't want to say potholes, but you've got like some low spots in the roads as they go along. They don't slope consistently from one end to the other. There's not a crowned section on the roads to get the drainage off. So those larger issues would be addressed when we came in and did the water main work, because we're going to tear the road up for that work then. So it's a question of, do you want to address these minor issues and address the rutting and the widening now, or wait till the core work for the water main replacement and possibly sewer work, depending on what we end up with that aspect of the improvements. Maybe we wait and do everything, all this together in several years from now when it comes up on the CIP schedule.
Would it be reasonable to do the drainage work now and wait to do the road work when it's all due? I mean, how far away are we from that? Is it a couple of years or is it 5 years?
Yeah,
I
so
don't
I
know.
think, I think the core, we shifted the water main, the A1A water main, to now we've got the bids on that. We're going to start construction soon on that. Then we keep the core portion of the CIP as the following year, we have 1 year for probably design, and then the following year. So what are we talking about? At least 2 or 3 years, I would say, to assuming the North Core is the next project on your CIP, which I believe it is. Yeah.
I know, I know you can't see me. The goal on Polo was to make it consistent with the width on the very south end, all the way from one end to the north end, and likewise on Spring Road, excuse me, where the pavement width was 15 feet down to Lakeview, and then it goes up to 18 feet on north of that. So it was on those two major streets, we were trying to make those widths consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the point, and by the way, Rebecca, I think you did a great job, exactly what we asked you to do, and it's a very thorough, detailed analysis with very specific and individual analyses, which I think is terrific. We're going to put this online so that the residents can see it and see exactly how it might impact each of their homes. But the point of this was to, in the short term, make more consistent the two main north-south roads in the town, Polo and Gulfstream, which are widely divergent. So this makes them fairly similar in width, and also addresses, particularly in Gulfstream to the south, the issue of extremely narrow roads and the damage caused by vehicles trying to get past each other. In addition, it addresses, for a very modest cost, the drainage problems that this town has experienced for the 30 years that I've been around here. And I think it's something that the core residents should evaluate and consider. What will we do with the water mains in the core, the CIP? I don't know. We don't have the sewer analysis yet. That's going to be coming. Baxter Woodman's working on that. We're still tapped into Tallahassee to see what's going on there. I think that this is something, it's not terribly expensive. It addresses the issues that have been raised every single day as long as I've been in this town. And I don't think it would set back the future road improvements on the CIP whenever that gets done, whenever that might occur. So I think it's a great initial step at trying to address the issues that everyone seems to complain about in this town. Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I thought the report was great. I like a lot of pictures with the little neighborhood, and I wish we'd had kind of more of this with the street lighting and some of the other projects we've had. So I agree with the mayor. I just have one question. I mean, it looks great. I think on a 3 or 4 year timetable, given that we get these complaints every single day. There's too much water, there's too much rutting. Is just if, just for a little bit of a safety net to say that we looked at it while the residents are evaluating this is, I mean, can we somehow, Ms. Travis, have a little narrative about what overlap there might be when we start redoing and paving the roads? Because these are just little strips, and then you got to strip it down, do a new base. I mean, all that stuff, we don't. Presumably, that the residents think, well, we'll just rip them all up and redo it to spec when we're doing the water main stuff. But I mean, I realize there's a lot of overlap and some of the new improvements are going to be taken out, but that's just my only comment.
So just add so you're talking about posting this, you said, so I would add into the report just a little paragraph that says the concept or the timing of the CIP work relative to this and how this would be done initially and to address these issues now, and then not knowing what the schedule is for the CIP in the North Core and the South Core. This is going to have some work in the South, so that's even longer time frame away.
Right.
As on
Yes, that's
CIP
longer.
now. So, okay, I'll add a little paragraph in the report before you post it, so we can have that in there.
Very good. Paul? Yes, Paul?
Actually, the reason I was waving, I'm actually connected hard wire, but the audio's coming in and out. Is anybody else having a problem, or is it just me?
No, it seems pretty good.
Yeah, we're good.
I lost Joan's picture there for a while.
Yeah, I went away for my Uverse connection was low, so I lost you all for a minute.
Oh, goodness.
Well, okay, are we saying that we're going to proceed? I guess is my question.
No, what we're going to do, Rebecca is going to modify the report somewhat, answer further questions we have today, and let's just get it online. This is something the residents of the core have been asking us to address for decades. And it seems to me that should give the town the opportunity to review this, look at it, and comment on it, not just proceed with it, because not only is the work something that needs to be considered with deliberation, but also in the context of the CIP, the sewer, and whatever else may arise. There are a couple issues that come up that I see. If I were a resident reading this on page 2, Rebecca, you make the comment, the landscaping and other improvements in the way of the widening will be removed. So that would concern me as a resident. Am I going to lose my 30-foot hedge on one of these roads? How much landscaping do you see being interfered with?
It wasn't really too bad, but obviously if we're putting pavement where there's grass or a shrub or a landscape area, then that's got to come out. But generally speaking, I think it was not too much. And then the other thing would we'd have to move somebody's mailboxes, a couple mailboxes, just move them, reinstall them back a little bit. There was a couple areas where people had put pavers or asphalt along the side of the road, I guess for their own little parking stalls across the street from their house. So those would come out, that kind of thing. I think the point is that the town would not be replacing landscaping because it's in the right, if it's in the right of way and it's in the way of the widening, we're not proposing to put it back.
I'm sorry, Rebecca, to interrupt you, but next, and I know you can't see me, but at the next meeting, 2 things here. I would like to have this is budget time. Well, if you can believe it, we're already, starting to talk about the budget. And so it's time, I think, that we have another conversation just to get up to speed on the CIP project, the calendar for it. And so I'd like to talk about that at the next meeting. I think it's timely since we're going to be putting this out on the website and have further discussion about this. But I'd also like to have a better handle, all of us be on the same page and have a good handle on where we are at the CIP, on the CIP schedule. So that's one item. And now I forgot what the second item was. So I'll,
Landscaping.
yep. The other thing that what I'd like to do is, as the staff, what we'll do is actually go out and inventory every road that we're looking at or potentially widening, and to see its impact on actual landscaping out there. So we'll be able to identify it address by address.
Good.
In
Good. I
my-
think that's important.
Right. But
Paul.
Thank you. Again, I apologize that for whatever reason, the audio at my end is coming in and out. So if I repeat something, I'm sorry. With regard to the impact on people's landscaping, while this is not a technical observation, as Joan Orthwine noted, a lot of us are now walking a lot more within the core. And except for some mailboxes, as Rebecca had cited, Travis, there's not going to be much impact on some of these vegetation other than grass, of course. I don't think. And the one place that will have some impact on landscaping, which is frankly, in my opinion, been an ongoing problem, is on Banyan. No, I'm sorry, not Banyan, Lakeview, between Gulfstream and Polo. That road keeps getting narrower because one of our neighbors chooses to put a hedge in the right of way. So that's obviously that's going to have to get removed if we follow this plan. But I'm very much in favor of moving forward with this. I'd like to work with Greg and the rest of the staff to do a financial feasibility analysis to see how this would, whether it's affordable, in terms of the town's budget and so forth. So if I can help on the financial side, I'd be happy to do that. But in summary, I think it's great that we're going to get it in front of the citizens and residents and let them look at it. But I don't think it's going to impact any individual property in any material way. And I think it's going to be for the betterment of the entire core area. So, you can see I'm in support of this. Thank you.
I had one other question. I'm sorry, Rebecca, go ahead.
Yeah, so there is one line item I have in the cost estimate to root prune some trees. I think that was on the south side of Lakeview, where you've got some root intrusion into the street. So there's that issue, but I think I agree with the other commissioners that mentioned there's not really a whole lot of landscaping, but of course, if it's your landscaping, then it's a big deal. So yeah, we do have some costs in there to remove landscaping and do restoration. The restoration, a lot of it is removal of, if you're going to widen the road, you got to back up, remove and back out the driveway apron that attaches to it. So some of the restoration has to do with taking out those pavers and restoring the apron to the new edge of pavement. But we did not do a lot by lot landscape inventory. So.
Just two
Rebecca,
comments.
I would agree with you that the probably from a mechanical perspective, the biggest challenge is going to be to restore the aprons so they look proper. And because some people put in some brick type of aprons and they're put in a artistic design and they look very nice. And so, that'll be a little challenge, but I assume that they can be restored to look properly. Yeah. And we would do that, correct?
Yes, definitely. It's actually a little bit easier to do pavers because you just take out what you don't need and then relay either the soldier course that's the border, or if they have a concrete curb that holds their pavers in place, then we would put a new border on it. So yes, we would restore, we'd cut it, take out that foot or whatever that we need to widen the road, and they would keep their pavers. We would give it to them and then fix what was remaining.
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, the driveway aprons
Thank
are,
you.
that's the largest thing, but then as Rita will note that a lot of the residents have a driveway removal agreement recorded against their property if they've improved it in the last 10 or 15 years, which basically says when we do work, you got to remove it and put it back. But just like the landscaping, in order to, help our residents and mitigate the impact of our construction, the town is gonna, when we get to the end of this, if we do it, help out with that, of course.
Two comments. Number one, the experiment with the curb along Polo, one of the homes there, the old Graziano property, has met with favorable reaction. And was there consideration of putting another curb on? I think the first curb's on Lakeview, isn't it, or on Banyan and Polo? But on the other street where you get these trucks making the turns and damaging the property on the turn.
Yeah, Mayor, there's probably, and forgive me for butting in, but we have other candidates curbs, more than one, that where I think a curb would help out, just like the one on Lakeview.
Okay. And the other comment I had is you had indicated, Rebecca, that the way to bring this project, should we elect to do it in whole or in part, within a more reasonable budget, is to attach it to an existing contract, possibly the A1A roadwork. How long would, if you did everything in your proposal, how long would that take, and how would that affect, if we use the contractor on the A1A project, how would it impact the A1A project and extend work for this in-core road work?
Well, since this is all above ground work that's proposed under this drainage improvements and widening, the water main portion would move forward as scheduled, and we would tack this on to the end, and it would be a change order. So then we would get a price from that contractor to change order these improvements. And then if he's already bringing in the equipment to lay asphalt and road rock, which he would be, then that offsets mobilization and demobilization and his overhead. If he's already got a piece of equipment in the area, then it's going to be a little bit less than if somebody just comes in as a separate project. So we would see if it would even add a time frame you're asking. So possibly we would give him maybe another, I don't know, maybe another month but it'd be towards the end of his contract. So he would get the water main without disruption. We wouldn't want him to address this before the water main gets put in there.
And the water main project probably won't be finished until December, January?
Yeah, I think that was the time frame.
So we'd be right in season.
Rebecca, could you comment about the county, Palm Beach County, having many contracts that cover this kind of work that we might look at maybe piggybacking off of?
Yeah, the county has kind of they have a contract that's a kind of a general contract that they let usually annually that's a line item contract. So they'll have a price already for some of these things that we're proposing here. And then the town enters into a contract with that contractor that has the counties that's been selected by the county, and then you can take advantage of those line items, the pricing on those line items. It's kind of in Trey's ballpark as far as how the piggybacking contract works, but it doesn't have to be the county's contract either. It could be a city of, Boynton Beach contract or a North Palm Beach contract, or whoever's got one that you can enter into a contract with that contractor, as long as he's willing to honor those same prices.
Tom?
Uh-oh.
Unmute. Yeah, just real quick on the mayor's point. I mean, typically, with all things being equal, this project is something that we try to do towards the end of the rainy season, depending on our weather patterns, which would be, July 15th to October 15th, finishing if everything was on schedule before the shoulder season, which may not lend itself to piggybacking, as Ms. Travis said, with the dates to the water main project. Just a thought.
Right. Yes, Paul?
Rebecca, do you have a sense of, if we didn't piggyback, what the number would be? If how much higher would the number be incrementally? Do you have any sense?
Well, I put a lot of fluff on this cost estimate as it is, so I would hope that if the town was able to piggyback, you'd get a better price than this. So I've got the 20% contingency on there, so you can take that off possibly right off the bat, but the line item pricing I have on here is pretty well inflated already, because I don't want to be, I always said I don't want to be the low bidder on my cost estimate. So
No, I understand, but my real question is just from a numbers perspective. Just give me a range. Are we talking a difference of 300, obviously not 300, $10,000 or $15,000 difference? Or is it 2,000 or is it 50,000? I'm just don't, of having a piggyback versus not having a piggyback, because it impacts the timing, I think. Because if we don't do it, would we consider doing it in the season? Otherwise, we would have to wait another year again. So that's where I'm going.
Well, I don't think it'd be that disruptive to any contractor to come in and do the drainage improvements. Those are kind of, those could be done, couple weeks, I would think. But it's the road widening that would be disruptive, and it would be dependent on the weather. And I would say like probably a 10 to 20% savings if we could get on a piggyback contract.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions of Ms. Travis? Okay. Rebecca, thank you very much. Again, a very thorough report and very informative. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So if you could just make that one change to the report so that we can put it online shortly. Great.
Very well.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Mr. Dunham and the COVID-19 update.
Okay, let me share my webcam again here. All right. I'm not going to recite to you all kinds of statistics of the impact of this virus on Palm Beach County or us here in Gulfstream, as these are readily available on your local newspaper and websites that you can look those statistics up. But during the month. As you know, the most significant changes that occurred were the openings of courses, parks, natural areas, boat ramps, community pools, and tennis courts. Of course, all these openings were accompanied by restrictions on the use of these various recreational activities, as we all know. But this week, most recently, the Board of County Commissioners wrote a letter to the Governor DeSantis requesting that Palm Beach County be included in phase 1 of its plans for reopening Florida. Are you guys? I know. Echo here. Right now, 64 counties are included in that phase 1, but Broward, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach County are not. And having participated in, I think it's about 56 conference calls regarding this with the, excuse me, with the EOC and all 39 other cities, the theme has been Palm Beach County trying to stay in lockstep with Broward County and Miami-Dade County. The BCC, the Board of County Commissioners, had a meeting on Wednesday that lasted 8 hours. And that was due to a lot of comment reaction to the rules that are in place at this point in time. And literally as we speak right now, the Board of County Commissioners is considering whether to open the beaches or not. So that's where we are now, and they may have already made a decision. We, as towns and cities, don't know what kind of restrictions they would have on a potential emergency order opening the beaches at this point in time. I know they've had a subcommittee that had been looking at opening the beaches, but I think as a result of that meeting on Wednesday, they're moving that along a little quicker. So if they were to make a decision to do that, obviously they would be doing something that's not in line with Broward and Miami-Dade at this point in time. But we don't know what their analysis is of opening the beaches right now. I'm sure our people at the EOC do, but I think certainly there's going to be a period of time that they would open, if they open the beaches, that it would be before Broward and Miami-Dade open theirs. And we as a staff here obviously would be impacted in some way. Obviously we have a beach, but in speaking with our police department, I mean, we believe that we have some things going for us, and that is, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but the Gulfstream beaches aren't really what you would find on social media in terms of if you live down in Miami-Dade and you got a buddy up in Jupiter and he said, hey, listen, I want to come up to go to the beaches, where should I go? Gulfstream beaches are probably not going to be at the top of that list. You're going to have Jupiter, Juno Beach, Town of Palm Beach, and even Ocean Ridge that actually has county parks in their city that are on the beach. But in any case, I mean, we would, we have a wide area along A1A where people that don't know where they're at could actually park there. We've actually had some incidents of people parking there, getting out of their cars and walking right across the golf course to go to the beaches, even now when they're not open. But those are the kind of things that we would have to address if they do indeed open the beaches. But that's kind of where we are at this point in time. And if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them.
And the county still views the closure of beaches as including private beach as well as public?
Yes, currently.
Any other questions?
I think the other thing that would help us in terms of the beaches, if they do have a beach opening, is that most of ours are private. And so, again, they're probably not on the radar of people out there on social media.
All right, thank you. Let's move on then to the Plaza Soleil update on street lighting.
Yes, all of the equipment is in, and Ms. White may be able to help me give an update on that. But I do know that they've been hand digging some new wiring that's got to go in and back to the transformers. But I don't think they've started installing the poles and the globes yet.
Well, yeah, I haven't seen too much work going on here, but
Okay.
you know, we're quarantined most of the time, so I'm not driving around too much.
Yeah,
I
well,
really-
yeah, FP&L has a subcontractor by the name of Davco. And I've spoken to Ms. White and to Mr. Snavely about the potential for seeing these trucks out there. They would be the electricians that are putting in the new electrical drops. So they spread that around, but that would be a company called Davco. But the good news is all the equipment is here and ready to be put into place.
Right, because I think waiting for the globe. Yeah, you were waiting for the globe. You had the poles, and we were waiting for the delivery of the globes.
Actually, it was the other way around. We had the globes, but not the poles. So the plan here is, because I've spoken to Mr. Snavely some about areas in there that might be dark, and so I've talked to FP&L about that. There are 26 poles that are on the contract. That's how many poles are out there now. And so we've decided to go ahead and put all the poles in, and then see what the lighting looks like with the new lights. See if there's any areas that we might need to add a pole.
Right. Yeah. There are a couple at the entrance. It's very dark at where the divided road is when you enter that way at night. That's a real dark spot. And I think down the end of where Chet Snavely lives, he was complaining about being a dark spot.
That's one of them. So that's the update on the poles.
Okay, let's move on to 2775 Avenue au Soleil and the lien issue.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Nazaro to talk about this.
Thank you, Mr. Dunham. So the news report is there was a sale. As you recall, we released the requirement that the house be demolished. If it was going to sell over, I think, 430,000, then we would take a percent of that. That came sort of lockstep with the whole COVID-19. So the realtor thinks that might be to blame. So they did not get more than they thought. We did receive, there has been a sale. We have received our $125,000 payment for the lien. And it's my understanding that it's been sold to a different Place au Soleil resident. So it's another Gulfstream resident who plans to demolish the house at this point. That's all the information we have. So it will still be demolished. And I believe that is on track to perhaps be on as early as the next commission meeting for demolition and approval of what that is to be replaced with. So that's the update on that, and this concludes the 2775 Avenue au Soleil lien drama. So that's happy to have that concluded.
Happy ending. That worked out well.
I was driving by, and I guess Chet Snavely bought the property. And he plans to. I asked him. He was speaking to the landscapers, and he plans to demolish it and to leave it as just to sod it, to put in irrigation and decided and his plan at this point anyway, but that's what he told me, he just planned to leave it as a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, it worked out very well for the town, not just in the removal of the lien and the removal of the property, but we don't have the difficulty of some unusually large or unattractive home being placed there. Chet is going to sod it and allow it to be green space for the foreseeable future. So worked out very well.
Well, I'm very pleased as a commissioner, and please communicate that to the new owner, because I think that's great. I mean, he solved the problem for the town, and that's a stand-up guy in any case.
Yep. Kudos to that. Okay. Any other comments on that before we move on? Just an announcement, ARPB meeting will be May 28th at 8:30 a.m. Mr. Dunham, if you'd address the finance reports.
Yes, sir. This represents 58% of our budget. And again, as mentioned earlier, we are beginning the budget process for the next fiscal year. The budget at this point is it happens every year. There are some adjustments that we need to make internally for each department for things that might have come up during the year that we weren't anticipating, such as COVID-19. Yes, and I do have Rebecca that's standing 6 feet from me to answer any questions if you might have on the balance sheets.
What was the $1,500 for sanitation supplies? That's a lot of masks.
We want to be prepared for the next time that we need to have them. And let me assure you that when this all began, that was the problem 39 cities had in Palm Beach County, is finding the equipment that they needed to do their jobs. So we don't want to be caught short without those. It also includes the N95 masks that the police department uses. Yes, Mr. Lyons.
Greg, on that subject, you reminded me of a question I was going to ask. Does the town now have, or has it had, and will it continue to have all the necessary gloves, masks,
Yes, sir.
whatever else is necessary, particularly for the police officers?
We do. There was a time when we probably used them more than we should, the ones that they were wearing, but we're fully stocked now to take care of all of our employees. And you know, there are people that are saying that we're gonna run into this again in the fall. We're not done with it now. So that was the purpose of getting the equipment while it was available.
Thank you.
It looks like it's been paid for by the judgment, fines, and violations of the local ordinance.
Yes, sir. That's right. I think we're 300% above our budget revenue amount for that.
Very good. Any questions on the finance report? Very good. Police chief, is Chief Allen here?
Yes, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You're gonna get
All
the
right,
picture.
request the report be submitted, accepted as submitted. One addition is the last meeting, we reported one vehicle that had been stolen during the month. And we actually had a second vehicle like 2 days later, which actually was being reported at the time of the meeting. That particular vehicle was a BMW, again, with the keys in the car, unlocked, a rental car. It is yet to be located. It's still at large, which is kind of unusual for that time frame. And the manager touched on safety equipment. All our officers are wearing their protective equipment when needed. And so far, we've all been safe and survived.
And that's a good point. I don't think anybody in the town staff or the town police or maintenance crew have contracted the virus. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct. Did have at least one that went to check their antibodies, but it was negative.
Very good. Okay, we'll accept the report as submitted. And let's move on then to the amendment to the interlocal cooperation agreement. Mr. Dunham.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is an agreement that the town has participated in for a long time. It needs to be renewed. This is what used to be known as Community Development Block Grant funds. I think they really don't get any assistance from these, but the county uses our population to help get the funding from HUD to direct it to low-income people for their needs. And so this is something that the town regularly does. And so we would recommend it forward to you to do that again. There's no downside to it for us.
Okay. Any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I have one comment on it. On the
Yes.
second page, the amendment to the agreement, the first paragraph, whereas at the last line, should that be federal fiscal years 215, 16, and 17? It reads 214 right now.
I noticed that, Commissioner White, and that was something that was submitted to us by the county, so we can make sure that that is corrected before it's executed by the town.
Catch, Don. Is there a motion to approve the agreement with Palm Beach County on the interlocal cooperation agreement?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein, Commissioner Orthwein,
She may have a mute button on.
Mayor Morgan,
Yes. There we go.
Commissioner Orthwein,
She's got the mute button on.
right hand.
Raise your hand if it's an aye. Go like this if it's a no. That's an aye. There we go.
Okay, that's
Unanimous. Okay.
okay.
Resolution 20-2.
Yeah, this is
Mr. Dunn. Yeah, let's
yes,
talk.
yeah, this is a resolution approving the contract for the A1A water main improvements with Foster Marine Contractors. They were the low bidder. So this is a resolution to approve signing that contract. It's been vetted by our town attorney, and I'm not sure if Mr. Lyons has read the complete contract, but I'll let him
Anybody
speak.
have any comments or questions? It's rather lengthy and detailed.
Just if I could for a second, Mayor, I know that we were talking about the timeline for this work. The notice to proceed, if that is issued, say June 1st, so by essentially the end of this month, it's 210 calendar days from the notice to proceed for that to be completed. So that would be January 1st. So if we issue a notice to proceed here, in the next week, then that would put us in sometime in December, and there are liquidated damages of $500 per day, per calendar day if they exceed that time. So we are looking at this project to start, essentially immediately. and then last till somewhere in December. So before, to be concluded before the end of the year. And then, of course, Greg and I can talk with Rebecca Travis as far as incorporating some of those minor drainage and road improvements for the core as well, and how that factors into that schedule.
Okay, yeah, that timing is consistent with what Rebecca stated today. Ms. Taylor, would you please read our resolution 20-2?
This is a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Gulfstream, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing the mayor of Gulfstream to sign a certain State Road A1A Water Main Improvements Phase 2 agreement with Foster Marine Contractors Incorporated, providing an effective date and for other purposes. And it's presented for adoption this 8th day of May, 2020.
Resolution 20-2 has been read for our approval. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second,
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
yes?
Commissioner Orthwine,
Raise your hand.
Morgan,
We seem to, we don't have a good connection there.
no.
I think we'll still have a majority vote.
We do.
Okay.
If you want to call. I'm voting aye as well. Okay.
I think she voted yes.
Passed. Okay, any other comments? Yes, Paul.
I wanted to apologize. At the beginning of this virtual call, for some reason my audio didn't work, so I didn't hear but a few words in a sentence. So if I interrupted anybody or jumped on a subject, I apologize. For whatever reason, the last 10, 15 minutes, my audio and reception's been perfect. By the way, I'm on Uverse AT&T, and I'm planning to move on to Comcast.
I think that's part of some of the problems that we ran into with AT&T.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on and compliment staff, particularly Greg and Trey, who, as you heard, have attended these daily meetings with the county, 56 of them. They're long, some can be contentious, but they've attended everyone religiously, represented our town well, and are keeping us abreast of any changes and new developments. So thank you for that effort.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our meeting. Thank you all. Stay safe. Meeting's adjourned.
You.